Welcome everyone. Today we're going to be learning how to build a custom provider. You might want to build a custom provider because you're working with a new provider, a new model, and Sublayer hasn't pushed out a provider yet that supports that new model or that new feature set, and you're able to create your own. Today we'll show you the few things that you'll need to know to make your own custom provider. Let's get started. First things first, we're going to be connecting with that custom provider using HTTP party. That's how we'll connect with the API. And we will be recreating the Ollama Llama 3.1 provider that we demo in the same docs above this tutorial. Let's start off by creating a new file for the custom provider. I'm going to save this. We'll make a class called Ollama Llama 3.1. Pretty simple so far. And here's where our first bit of knowledge, custom proprietary knowledge around Sublayer providers comes in. We're going to need to make a class method that's called call. And it's going to come with two named parameters that are important, which is prompt and output adapter. Okay, and it's just as a reminder, prompt probably is pretty easy to know what it is, but Dr. Seuss poem generator is a good example of the LLM output adapter. This one's a single string output adapter with a name of generated poem and a description where it's a short poem in the style of Dr. Seuss. That is the output adapter object that we're getting here in the Ollama Llama 3.1 class for that particular generator. And you can get other output adapters for different generators to come into this provider. Wonderful. So the first thing that we're going to do is get a response back from this API, this Ollama API, which we'll take a look into a little bit more deeply. So let's come up with the basic structure of what this method is going to do. We're going to get a response. So we're going to do a post. In our post, we'll have some kind of a base URL, and then we're going to have some kind of a body. With that response, we are going to parse it. And after we parse the response, we'll get some kind of result. So this is basically all we need in order to create a provider for Sublayer. Let's actually fill out these values and see how this is done. There are a few more helpful tools that you can use that come from output adapter to build out some of the response object here, or the request object here. So let's go to the Ollama site first and get our base URL. I'm going to go into the docs for Ollama, go into the API here. And in the API, we're going to do something very simple. Sublayer gem is relying on function calling. You can make it work without function calling. If you're interested in that, please take a look at these older examples of providers that we use system prompts for instead of using function calling, if you want to go in that direction. But if the provider that you're working with, and presumably it is new, has function calling, that is something that we're going to leverage. And here's an example right here of the use of tools, function calling, to make your request. And so that's what we're going to use. And we'll talk about that a little bit as we're building this out. So here's the base URL. Got a nice example here that we're going to be able to leverage pretty heavily for our body. And so let's put our model, which is going to be Llama 3.1, and we'll put messages. And the way that messages is written out here for those of you that are familiar with the OpenAI spec. This is kind of implying that there can be a history of messages here. That's why there's an array. Just an FYI for those of you that are interested in building your custom providers with some history or something like that, it is possible. And you can make your own custom output adapters as well. So very modularized and customizable, all of these different pieces of the Sublayer gem. So let's add a very basic message that's using our prompt that we're receiving here. A role of user, contents of just the prompt. Great. And after messages, we see stream here. Let's take a look at what stream is all about. That's not something that you'll see on the OpenAI spec by default. So let's take a read. And it says here, stream optional. If false, the response will be returned as a single response object rather than a stream of objects. Okay, so what's implied here is that by default, Ollama is optimized for a chatting interface where the response is being given a few tokens at a time, a few words at a time, so that you can have the response, stream, a sentence to you. That's not what we want here. We do want to receive the entire response all at once, so we will do a stream of false here and go back to our function calling example. And we then have our tools array where we're just going to supply one function as our tool. And for those of you that are unfamiliar, tools are these, we're giving a set of tools to the LLM as a set of tools that it can use and describing how the tools work. And so we're going to give a function as a tool. Right now that is the only supported tool in the OpenAI spec. We'll see what comes out in the future. And we'll give a function. And here there's some room for you all to try different things and experiment with different models. Different providers will respond differently with the way that you describe your function. So we have name and description. You can use the output adapter's name and description here if you'd like to. The name would be something like a generated poem or a historical event, or it could be anything. It could be a Boolean value, maybe visible, and it'll return true or false. And then you could describe what that function should do. And so you could leverage the output adapter's name and the output adapter's description as well. Output adapter's description, if you wanted to here. Okay. Now I'm not going to do that. I'm going to just give it a very generic name because after playing with Llama 3.1 and Ollama, that's what I think works best and works well enough. So I give the function a name called response, and this is really about trial and error. Each LLM has its own little quirks. So we're going to give it a name. Description is optional. I know that because you can look at the spec for description. And we're going to give it parameters here. It's going to be a type object. Properties, and here is where we are going to be able to leverage a nifty tool. If you're going with JSON schema and the OpenAI spec, and this is the OpenAI JSON schema spec here in properties that we're looking at. If you're doing that and abiding by that, then all you need to do is use this helper method on output adapters called format properties. It will take whatever properties you have for any of our output adapters, and it will format it for you in the JSON schema spec. So that's a nifty little tool. And then the required parameters or properties, same thing. You can just say output adapter dot format required, and that will complete the more meaty part of the API, and that's it. That's it. You'll be done with the API call here for your provider, your custom provider. So let's try our code out and actually see what comes out. We'll need to change our script to use the Ollama provider that we just created. So that's first, and now let's try it out. Alrighty, so we see that the response is inside of a message. There's a tool call, and so let's actually parse this response. Put bind and pry in here. And add pry temporarily. Run this one more time. Wonderful. And if we do response, message, tool calls, 0, function, and then arguments. Then we can use here, generated poem is actually the output adapter's name. So if we do output adapter.name, we'll be able to get the there was once a flipper so bright who danced through the day with great light. So we're able to grab the response this way, and that could be our result. Now it's encouraged that you put some error handling here as well in case a tool call wasn't used or a tool wasn't called. It's good to error out here, or if you want to be flexible and receive responses that use the output adapter JSON key without being in a tool call, you could do that as well. It really depends on the provider and the model that you're using. But let's just give this a go a few times. And here is it working. In the land of whimsy where wild things play, I danced with dragons on a sunny day. Alright, that's it. Thanks so much for checking out this tutorial. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for the latest LLM updates and Sublayer Gem tutorials. See you next time.